Welcome back to the deep dive. You sent over a really fascinating stack of sources this week.
Oh, yeah.
A whole collection of conceptual frameworks, quantitative models, all designed to do something, well, something incredibly ambitious.
Right. To quantify societal stress, to try and predict major systemic failure.
Exactly. We're going way beyond the usual political headlines here. We're looking at the actual operating metrics, the hard numbers that analysts and even advanced AIs are using to calculate everything from, I don't know, constitutional decay to the odds of a military strike.
And that's really our mission for you today, to synthesize all these different formulas. We're going to go through them, systematically.
From the internal stability stuff.
Right, like the Constitutional Unraveling Index, all the way to these really high-stakes conflict formulas like the Israel strike likelihood.
The goal being to understand what indicators get the most weight when you're trying to calculate just how fragile a country is.
Okay, so let's unpack this. If you think of a nation as this massive, complex machine, these frameworks are like the diagnostic dashboard.
That's a great analogy.
They're measuring the pressure on the boiler, the structural integrity, even the psychological profile of the person at the wheel. We're basically looking for the fault codes that predict a breakdown.
Let's start with that baseline health check then.
Sounds good. The foundational model seems to be this sovereign stability assessment framework. It gives you two big scores.
The economic instability score, EIS, and then the more conceptually tricky one, the Constitutional Unraveling Index, the CUI.
And the scale they use is something else.
It's crucial to get the scale right away because, yeah, it's a terrifying one. It runs from 1 to 100.
1 is maximum stability, like a perfectly healthy society.
And 100 is total systemic failure. So these aren't measuring, minor political spats. They're designed for existential risk.
Let's focus on that CUI, the Constitutional Unraveling Index. That's where the real analytical detail seems to be.
It is. It measures the degradation of the core constitutional order. It's not looking at policy, it's looking at process.
How does it break that down?
You've got 3 key areas. The first is pretty straightforward, rule of law adherence. Just, does the government respect legal processes and court decisions?
Okay, that feels pretty black and white. But the second one, institutional integrity. That seems like the real alarm bell in our current era.
It absolutely is. This pillar looks at the health, the independence of nonpartisan agencies.
Civil service, central banks, that sort of thing.
Exactly. And the indicators they track go way beyond just budget cuts. They're looking for the politicization of the civil service.
Loyalty tests.
Right, and efforts to dismantle or defund agencies. And here's the key modern indicator attacks on the legitimacy of institutional data and analysis.
Wait, hold on. Why is attacking data an existential risk factor? Isn't that just, tough political talk?
Well, it's seen as an existential risk because it undermines governance itself. I mean, if you can't agree on basic facts...
You can't make policy.
You've got it. If you can't agree on the inflation rate, you can't fix the economy. That breakdown of data trust is what sends the institutional integrity score shooting up.
Which leads right into the third CUI component, doesn't it? Social cohesion and public trust.
Precisely. Because once you've attacked the data, you fracture the public's ability to even talk to each other constructively. Yeah. The core metric here is the agreement on a common set of facts across partisan divides.
So it's not about agreeing on policy, it's about agreeing on reality.
Yeah. If you can't even agree that GDP grew at 2%, the system has a critical failure.
That idea, cohesion hinging on shared facts, brings us to another metric you sent, the Narrative Dissonance Index, the NDI, which is designed specifically to measure that rupture, to quantify how much the public rejects the official, everything is normal narrative.
And the NDI is powerful because it's built entirely from published nonpartisan data sources. We're talking Pew, Gallup, 538.
So it takes something subjective like public mood and makes it quantifiable.
Exactly. Using 4 equally weighted pillars scored 1 to 10. 10 is critical instability.
Okay, so let's look at those. Pillar 1 is institutional trust.
Right. This is just longitudinal polling averages for, Congress, the presidency, the media.
And a score of 9 or 10 means average trust is consistently below 30%. I mean, think about that. If your faith in most of society's pillars is that low, what's holding it together?
Analytically, not much, which is why Pillar 2 is just raw public sentiment.
The right direction, wrong track polls.
Simple mood check. If over 75% of people consistently say wrong track, that's a 9 or 10 on the NDI. Just pure national pessimism.
And pillar 3, media influence, that's trying to quantify the competition for reality itself.
It is. It's a ratio, the alternative audience versus the establishment audience. It's measuring how much the official story is being crowded out.
And finally, political expression.
Yeah, that just sums up the vote share for any candidates whose platform is explicitly anti-establishment or populist. It's the political result of all that dissonance.
So when you get high scores on the CUI institutional decay and the NDI, public rejection, that's when analysts turn to the Stage 3 Vulnerability Index, the SVI.
And an 8 or higher on the SVI means you are alarmingly close to a full-blown crisis state.
What does it add to the mix?
It synthesizes all those internal data points we just covered, but it adds one crucial forward-looking element: the power seizure risk score.
This is the one that looks at the leadership itself, right? It's not just checking the engine oil, it's measuring how hard the driver's stomping on the gas while the engine is seizing.
That's a perfect way to put it. This score evaluates specific leadership actions, like sudden firings or trying to take over independent regulators, and it combines that with a tyrant hypothetical fit assessment.
So they're actually bringing in personality metrics.
Explicitly, they focus on the dark triad traits: narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy.
Which brings us to the last internal model, the High Collapse Risk Score, or HCR.
Right, this one is inspired by the academic work of Luke Kemp. It's designed to assess what he calls Goliath societies.
Highly hierarchical, concentrated societies.
Exactly. And it's a simple average of 5 scores, 1 to 10. And again, elite behavior is front and center.
It starts with the basics, like inequality extraction.
Yeah, using things like the Gini coefficient. If a small elite is extracting most of the resources, the score goes up.
But then you have the explicit dark triad elite behavior score.
And the reason this is so important in collapse models is because those traits, narcissism, psychopathy, they indicate a willingness to prioritize personal power over the long-term survival of the nation itself.
It measures structural brittleness.
Precisely. The other factors are the hierarchical structure itself, vulnerability to shocks like a pandemic, and then the inverse of the potential for recovery.
Meaning a higher score means lower odds of bouncing back.
Because the system is designed to prevent change. It can't course correct.
Okay, that's a pretty comprehensive and frankly grim look at internal fragility. Let's switch gears. How does all this internal rot feed into external conflict?
This is where it gets really interesting. We're moving to the Iran Round 2 likelihood formula, the IRL. And what's fascinating is how much weight it gives to domestic factors.
It's split into thirds, roughly.
Okay.
The biggest piece, 40%, is the hegemonic alliance imperative.
Which is a mouthful. But it measures ideological pressure from, and it specifically mentions this, the domestic MIGA, or Make Israel Great Again faction.
And Israel's own now or never political demand.
Exactly. Then you've got the conventional military part, force posture at 30%. Are the carrier groups in position?
But the last 30% is the real link, the domestic crisis level. And it directly plugs in the SVI score we just talked about.
Right. So this is basically the wag the dog theory, but, baked right into the math.
A recognition that domestic fragility creates an imperative for foreign conflict, to distract, to unite.
And that concept is weighted even more heavily in the Israel's strike likelihood formula, the ISL. It starts from a baseline of 4 out of 10, just assuming that active planning is always happening.
It uses standard factors, triggers, force posture, but the heaviest weighted component is domestic political drivers, D.
With a weight of 0.2. And a score of 10 on that component means an existential domestic crisis, where the ruling coalition's survival literally depends on launching a strike.
The model sees internal necessity as the primary catalyst.
It does.
Yeah.
But it also, refreshingly, has subtractive components.
Constraints, like logistics or not getting a U.S. green light.
And international deterrence. Pushback from Russia, China, OPEC.
The sources gave a really clear example of this in action. The raw math, with high domestic urgency, spits out a 9.2.
Which they immediately cap at 9, because 10 is reserved for, missiles are in the air.
But then the human analysts step in.
Right. Here's the interesting part. They tempered that score further down to a 7.5 or 8 because of uncertainty about who would be in the U.S. presidency, uncertainty about getting that green light.
It shows these are tools, not crystal balls.
Exactly. And that's a perfect segue to the last set of sources, which move beyond human teams entirely and into the realm of AI.
We're looking at thought experiments from the large language model, Grok 4.
First up is the Trump Authoritarian Consolidation Score, the TAX score.
A 1 to 10 scale for democratic backsliding, and it's weighted